So obviously pretty small audience, so we'll keep it pretty casual, I guess. So I've got Bradley Slaughter, Melissa Jane Stapley, and Brent Johnson. If you guys could maybe just go down, starting with Brent, and then just move back to me, giving a brief little bio.
Yeah, I'm Brent Johnson with Hemp Law Group. We are Brent Johnson with the Hope and Law Group. We're a nationwide full-service business law firm. We serve just the cannabis space. We do everything from corporate transactional work, mergers, acquisitions. We do private investment fund work. We do IP, intellectual property. We do tax, litigation, real estate. I personally have been a 20-year corporate securities business attorney, so that's a lot of what I focus on. We're headquartered in Denver. We've got almost 50 attorneys nationwide, and we're starting to expand into Latin America and Europe.
Hi everyone, I'm MJ. My company is MJ Hybrid Solutions. We're an online sales and education training program for dispensaries, CBD retail stores, and pretty much any cannabis company that has sales reps in the industry. I've been in the industry 5 years. I started on the CBD side with company CBD Sciences 5 years ago. So been in the industry a while, been consulting, helping a lot of new companies as they roll out their brands and build their teams. So excited to be here.
Hey, I'm Brad Slaughter. I am the president and founder of Nature Secret Holdings, which is a portfolio company of over 7 subsidiaries, 6 of them being CBD. Formerly, I was one of the lead editors and the owner of California Weed Blog. We focus on the science, business, and legislative properties of cannabis, how it can affect you, how it can hurt you, and how you're getting screwed in the political market.
Perfect. So that's a good broad spectrum for our panel today. I'm just going to ask the small audience that we have here, who is considering or is currently investing in the CBD space? Just part of show of hands. And then for anyone else, if you're a business, are you looking for investors maybe? Any businesses looking for investors? Okay, cool. So we're talking about how to make money from green on green, hemp stocks and stocks. So let's start right away. When you're considering investing in a CBD or hemp company, what are the top 3 elements that each of you look for right away? And I'm sure there'll be some crossover.
Since we have a small group, I'd be kind of curious to see what you guys are doing. That way we can tailor some questions to or answers to what you guys are doing. Like, what kind of investments are you making?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe someone. Pulling a mic right now.
Anyone want to share their thoughts?
Yeah, I was just saying, since we have such a small group, if you guys have anything in particular we want to address, happy to. Like, I'm kind of curious to know what kind of investments that you're making. Are they on the marijuana side? You, sir? Yeah.
I've got one that's in the transactional side.
Okay. Is it on the marijuana side or on the hemp side?
It can be either.
Okay, good.
And then I'm involved in a company that's a CBD supplier for people who are manufacturing product and for scientific research, medical research specifically.
Cool. Go ahead, ma'am.
My cousin is starting a CBD company and has asked me to help raise money.
Oh, great. Anybody else want to give us some things that we can think about as we answer your questions? Okay. New hemp farmer? Okay. How many acres?
Hemp research license, and we're starting very small just to see what we need to do and build infrastructure, and then we'll move to a larger piece of property.
And what's the tillable property that you're looking at?
Well, we'll have to buy more property. Right now we're on 13 acres.
Okay.
What do you plan to do with the hemp once you grow it?
That's what we're going to find out this year.
Okay, right. Good. Now, so hopefully we can give you some ideas around that today. That's why I want to kind of get some input. So let me give you a high-level kind of overview just of the industry and the regulatory structure, and then we can talk about how you want to develop products and grow your business, etc. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with the plant, Cannabis sativa L plant, and it's got the marijuana side, which is higher than 0.3% THC. It's got the hemp side, which is less than 0.3% THC. I'm not even going to talk about marijuana because this is a CBD conference. On the CBD side, on the hemp side, hemp is now fully legal at the federal level. So you can import seeds. They're working through the certification on that. You can plant it, you can grow it, you can process it. and you can sell hemp-derived products, fully legal at the federal level. The USDA has been tasked with putting regulations in place to tell you how you plant it and grow it and process it and things that you can do with it. The FDA obviously has a say when it's used in dietary supplements, et cetera. But even more importantly, every state has to implement their own statutes and regulations around the program. So back in 2014, hemp actually became legal, but only for marketing and research purposes. In December of 2018, hemp became fully legal for all purposes. Hemp and all hemp-derived products, cannabinoids, et cetera, extracts. So that's important to understand that. But it's also important to understand that each state also has to implement their own statutes and regulations that comply with the federal law and the USDA regulations. So as you're developing products or navigating this state, that state, it's state by state. It's just different, even sometimes down to the local level. So with that, that's just the regulatory framework. I wanted to kind of roll that out so we can go on from there. Sorry.
No, you're doing it right, so that's fine by me. I guess then we'll just go into being as. I assume there's some people who are looking to probably get some investors. I'll start with Melissa. If you want to maybe explain, since you did the pitch with ArcView, what maybe questions investors are looking for the companies. So what do you think that investors are asking or looking for, and how do you get them to invest in your company?
So obviously they're going to look at, is there a need? Are you solving, the solution to a problem? What are you bringing to the table? The second thing too is the risk, right? We're in a high risk industry. So they got to look at, can you navigate around that, and with different risk factors that are whatever happens, right? Are you able to pivot? And then obviously a big one is team. People are big, making sure they'd rather have A players with a so-so product than a B player with a great product, because they're big. The team seems to be probably the number one that I get the most from investors. And then just, I think, obviously trademark, IP, what do you bring in that's different? What's unique? Can you scale it? Anything that...
I could probably talk about this for the next hour.
Yeah.
Put cannabis aside, I spent 20 years, I spent the first 4 years of my life in Silicon Valley working with tons of startup companies, and so I work with tons of early stage companies. I've also now represented a lot of investors that are investing in the space, and so I see a lot of deal flow, and I see really good deal flow, and I see really horrible deal flow. So even cannabis aside, just think about how you build a business, right? You have to have a product idea. You can Google it. What's a business plan? What are the 10 elements you want in a business plan? You can Google it, and you can find that. Do I have a viable product? What's the market? What's the competition? And then things that I think about more from the legal side is, have you kept good books and records? Have you set up a proper corporate structure? Do you have the proper contracts in place? From a finance perspective, I think, have you built out a financial model? I have folks that come to me and they want to raise a bunch of money, but they don't have a financial model. And so I'm not going to invest in a company that can't tell me how much they think they're going to make in the next 3 to 5 years, nor have they estimated their expenses and how they're going to scale, et cetera. If you're further down the pike, have you done evaluation of the company? That's important. Management team is extremely important. I want to know what you've done in the past, what your successes were, what your expertise is, and the expertise of your team, because without a team that has expertise and the ability to execute, companies don't go anywhere. And technology was brought up as well. If you have intellectual property, that's even icing on the cake, because that's something that's protectable. Patents, obviously, for 20 years. Trademarks for the life of the use of that mark. So those are all. I could go. I'm going to stop there for a second and see if anybody else has stuff to add.
So in particular, especially when you're getting investment, what's your exit strategy? What do you want to do? Do you want to go IP? Do you want to just get acquired eventually? What exactly do you want out of your company? And also, you just can't come in saying, I'm a CBD company, and this is what I'm doing is CBD. Where you're going into, what's your niche market? There's so many vast arrays of markets that you can go into with the CBD space. Don't just be a CBD company, because you're just going to be wiped out like everyone else that's just a CBD company. Find something particular that you can actually go into. And most importantly, figure out where you're at. What state are you in? Like you guys are talking about, what state are you in? What are the regulations behind it? I've said it in the last couple panels. Massachusetts just legalized everything with CBD 2 days ago. you never know what this market's going to do. So if you don't have a proper plan in place of figuring out where the regulatory structures is and where you're setting up your market, you could get screwed very quickly. So no investor is going to look into a market that could possibly be a gray area or could be more conservative that's not looking into a CBD market right now. So, finding out where you want to be and how you want to set up your market, where you're going to infiltrate, what type of niche you're going to go into, and just making sure on another side that your compliance is correct. Once regulations go in, you're going to need to make sure you have CGMP certifications or be compliant with those certifications, ISO certifications, depending on what type of corporate structure you're going to do and what type of part of the market you're going to do, whether it's manufacturing, extraction, product supplies, distribution, or growing.
And I was going to add in kind of your second part of the question, which was how do you pitch it to them? And I think that as well, again, goes back to know your audience, right? So if you're investing, like when I pitched at ArcView, they're getting the same slides, every single person, that the market's going to be this big by this time,
Right.
and going down. And there's certain things you can take out for investors that might know more about the cannabis space. But if you're also pitching to investors outside the space, then you need to be very specific and spend a lot of time on the market share and the statistics and revenue, and then educating them a little bit too on the product, because a lot of investors don't even know anything about a lot of CEOs don't know anything about CBD or cannabis when they're starting these companies, right? So you got to educate and kind of bring that in a little bit. But just knowing who you're speaking to.
Yeah, and I think you hopped on this a little bit, Brent, on one of the last panels that we were on. Investors are becoming a lot more knowledgeable about this space. You were talking about yesterday. There were at least 4 or 5 years ago, people were just throwing millions and millions of dollars at people that just said, "Hey, I'm a CBD company, and this is what I'm going to do." Because even if they, throw a needle in a haystack, they're still making a couple $1 million and they make their money back. It's not that case anymore. If you don't know as much as the investor knows, you're dead in the water already.
Just a couple of follow-up points. One, to your point about being I'm a CBD business. I don't even know what that means.
Right.
To be honest with you. What do you make? You make drinks. You make tinctures. You make pills. You make creams. I make the best drink in the industry that happens to contain CBD. So think about what the product is that you're trying to sell, not just the fact that it contains CBD. I think the number right now is I think we're up to 5,000 brands of CBD products on the market. So how do you set yourself apart? And so I think I used an example on maybe a panel yesterday. There's Grey Goose and there's Absolute. Why do people pay more for Grey Goose? I mean, for some reason they've been able to develop a brand around Grey Goose and an experience and the way people think about it, and they pay more money for it. And so, I mean, in the end, I can guarantee you there's not going to be 5,000 CBD brands on the market. Who knows how many there's going to be, but the ones that are going to remain are the ones that have actually built brands and built experiences around those brands. And then secondly, just to tag on to the investor portion, more and more of the investors that are coming into the space are more sophisticated and more experienced, and so they're going to do very detailed diligence. So they're going to want to make sure your corporate structure is clean, you've done all your compliance and regulatory coverage issues, you have all your contracts, you have your books and records, and so it's important early on to make sure all that stuff's right. So, yeah, get a good attorney, get a good accountant. If you need a consultant, anybody that you need to help build your business right from the get-go is going to make a huge difference in the long run.
And I can't, harp enough on regulation. Like they're at least, most of these companies are even downstairs. You probably won't even see them in the next year or two. Like they're not complying correctly whatsoever with how the compliancy measures are, whether that be a scannable QR code that goes to a COA. Half the companies down there might not even know what a COA is. Like you need to make sure you have the right regulations in place, because investors are looking at that now, and they know that that's coming down the line.
Yeah, and just and ultimately, if your goal is to sell that company down the road, that will make you more money when you sell that company. Mm-hmm. If you have a very clean, well-organized, structured, compliant company, you'll get more money when you go to sell it. If it's a mess, one, you either won't sell it or it's going to be a challenge to do all the cleanup to get it to a place where it's marketable.
I feel bad interrupting you guys. I just like hearing it go all day. No, it's fine.
Next question.
I guess from there we'll go maybe looking at a smaller company. What have you noticed maybe as a benefit or disadvantage to remaining private and seeking private investment versus going public and getting that public investment side? Is there any advantage because of the regulation issues that are surrounding this industry in remaining private for as long as possible or getting public as fast as possible?
The only thing I can say in regards to that is with going private, because with all the bank issues and stuff, and it can make you a messy finance
Yeah.
situation. So when you're public, you have to put everything out there, right? And I raised a little bit of money through Seed Invest, which was crowdfunding. So I still have to submit a form, and it's not fun. And I'm a small company still, right? So it's, with going public, you have everything's thrown out there, and it's just there's so much turmoil. So I don't know. It's you have to be willing to let that all and be very, like you talked about, very organized and very have everything put together and have backup plans that in regards to the banking
Yeah.
and your finances and how you're sorting that.
I think, because a lot of the big companies right now that are getting investments are, private labelers, are wholesalers, farms, stuff like that. If you're a product company, it might not be beneficial to you to try to get as much money as possible and get a lot of investment right now, because we don't know where everything is going to lie yet. If you get a massive amount of money for your product line and you start making a massive batch of products, labeled, everything ready, and then now we got to change everything because it's not compliant anymore, and we've sold it in 50 different stores, and now everything has to be recalled. The amount of money that you just lost out of that is exponential. So it might not be the best process, as long as unless you have your hand on the pulse of what's going on the regulatory side. At least from a product line side, just be careful from that, and just be cognizant of what's going on.
Yeah, I think part of the question was, how much do you raise, when do you raise it, and is it private or public? But the private-public debate, anybody in the early stages of their company shouldn't even be thinking about going public. There's the big rage to go public and do a reverse takeover into the Canadian Stock Exchange. Most of those things are highfalutin pump and dump schemes. Going public isn't. There's tons of requirements, and there's a bunch of different ways to go public. Obviously over-the-counter stuff. There's not a whole lot of that happening in the U.S. just because up to now, marijuana is still illegal at the federal level, and so the New York Stock Exchange, the NASDAQ is for the most part not touching those companies. You can go public on the over-the-counter billboards and all that, but that's further down the pike. If you're early on, it's for the most part about raising private money, and then how you raise it and who you raise it from often ties to what's your long-term business plan and your exit strategy. If you want to build a small, stable CBD company that's doing creams, and you want to sell it in your little shop out of LA for the next 20 years and just take the revenues, then you just need some investors that are willing to just take that, take a portion of that revenue. If you want to do the more traditional venture capital route, where you're going to bring in seed money, develop the products, start making revenue, and then start doing preferred stock financings with the ultimate goal of going public and or being acquired, then you're starting to reach out to more institutional investors and venture capital firms. And then the timing just depends on how fast you can scale, and the amount at any point in time. People come to me and say, I need to raise $5 million. And I'm like, well, where'd you get that number? Well, that's just what I think I need. I said, have you done the financial model? Do you have anything else that tells me how much you need and what you're going to do with it? And so if you throw out a number of how much you need, you should also be able to answer the question of why you need it, how you're going to use it, and how it's going to make me more money down the road.
And from the farming side, it's an agricultural product now. So, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Brent, but I would look in the futures for farms as well, because you can start utilizing futures now, or at least get into that side of the market, start researching that.
Perfect. I guess in that same line of thought, if you're a smaller company, what type of investors should you be looking for? Should you be looking within your community? Should you be looking internationally, because this is still going to be a global industry? Where should you be looking to get that money, and how does that change maybe from the size of your company?
Well, I think, for any investor and any investment for any type of business, you got to look and see who's best for you. For any type of business that I've, built. It's, when an investor comes in, it's not, I just want your money. It's, how can we work together to move forward? They have to be an integral part of your company as well, whether they help you out with extra people that you get to meet, more connections, or actually being able to supply certain areas to facilitate. It all depends on how you can help each other. It's not just about the money.
Yeah, I agree, man. And again, it's highly driven on the type of company, the stage of the company, and what the long-term exit strategy is. But just make sure that your goals and the investors' goals are aligned. We have folks that literally want to raise a bunch of money and run a business for 20 years, and if they try to bring in investors that are looking for a 5-year exit, how is that going to be structured? How are they going to get their return back, right? And so, the flip side, if you're looking to exit in 5 years, but this investor is wanting to get dividends for the next 20 years, you guys aren't in alignment. And so, certainly people just want to throw money around, but they don't really think about, are our long-term interests aligned? And so that's super important. And it just, part of it just nailing those terms down and getting make sure everyone's on the same page. Secondly, it's super important if you can find somebody that also has some strategic value. Somebody that knows about your product line or can make introductions, can bring in other investors. And so that's also important as well.
The only thing I was going to say in regards to you talked about what type of investors to go after. Obviously, I think early on starting, you don't want to go out, like you said, and be like, oh, I need $5 million. You want to try to limit and work your way up to building and getting more investment as you grow. Your valuation and there's a bunch of other reasons. But so starting small, obviously, if you have friends or family, you can reach out to the community. And if you don't have that option, I did do a crowdfunding route. I will say part of me wishes I didn't do it. It was small though, but again, there were some things with it. They brought no value, to helping the business grow. It was just like raising money, but that's an option for a lot. I know a lot of cannabis startups are looking at crowdfunding as well, but just tread lightly. But then, so it depends on what you're doing, and how you plan on growing, and who you need in.
And I know, Brian, you probably extrapolate us on this a little bit, a little bit more than I would. But especially when it comes into investment, when you're scaling, the first part of the investment, don't give away the boat right there. That you don't give 25%, 30% of your company on the first investment, because you're going to need the scale. You're going to need probably more C-series investments, and as you go further. So, expanding the amount of stocks you have, going to 1 million shares or 100,000 shares, instead of just keeping at the basic 100 shares and being able to solidify that properly. Doing a first investment, even if you think $5 million is going to take you, you're probably going to need a much larger investment if you scale a lot more. And already having 25% of your company gone, what are you going to give for this next investment series?
Yes, a couple points there. One, certainly there is such a thing as raising too much money at a certain particular point in time. And so don't take on more money than you need at a certain point in time. And that should really be driven by your financial model and your projections, both near and long term. If you take on too much money, it ends up, first of all, potentially being wasted, and also it puts you in a position where you may not be able to produce the returns that you hope to produce because money's just sitting there idle. And that also helps you control how much of the company you give up at any one point in time. And there's two sides of that coin, right? You don't want to give it too much too soon, but at the same time, you don't want to not be willing to give it up. And I can give you a concrete example of a company that had a really sweet deal on the table. The investor squeezed them a bit, right? Tried to drive down the terms. They weren't happy. They said, "Oh, we don't need you." 9 months later, they were out of business. So they have 100% of zero, as opposed to 51% of what could have been a fairly large number. So it's a balance, and I would just recommend get folks involved early on. Get a good lawyer, obviously, get a good finance guy, get a good CPA, and they can guide you through how much you should give up at any point in time, given what your valuation is and how much you're raising and all the other terms that affect the investment.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I guess in the similar type of question, but if you're a U.S. company, the U.S. market is a big market right now, but regulatorily wise, it's nightmare. So if you're a U.S. company, and there's been a lot of talk about the big companies coming in to just poach, they're ready to pounce the second this goes, it gets properly regulated. should you be anticipating that? If you're a small to medium-sized U.S. company, should you be basically planning or have part of your business strategy to be you're going to be acquired because it's an inevitability just with the way the market is? Or should you be aiming to invest and get to a certain size?
Honestly, unless you're doing something that's completely unique, that would be one of your first things you should be thinking about is who is possibly going to be trying to acquire me. I mean, there's way too many big corporations that are already ready to go. You already see CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, they already have their products in there. And if you're thinking that they're not already looking at their own proprietary blends, their own specific manufacturing that they're doing, specific companies that they're already acquiring, whether that be, American companies or international companies, you really need to start thinking about that. Because that's definitely something that's happening right now. They're always looking for consolidation, and the next 5 years is going to be a massive consolidation in the market.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that consolidation is inevitable. And if you're not kind of at least thinking about it or how that's going to affect your business long term, you should be thinking about it. It doesn't mean that you have to get gobbled up at some point in time. Part of it is if you built the business and it's well structured and it has good finances and everything's organized, you might want to get gobbled up and make a pretty penny. But there's also not a reason why you couldn't be. I mean, I live in a small mountain town outside of Denver, Colorado, and I buy from the local ski shop. I mean, there's tons of online retailers, and I can go online, probably get skis cheaper online, but I go to my local guy because he's cool, and I support local businesses. So it's not that you're always going to be gobbled up, but part of it is just thinking about your strategy and how you see yourself in 3, 5, 7, 10 years.
And then, once again, it's location. Where are you at?
Yes, ma'am.
With a smaller money,
Hold on.
for smaller money and a sort of friends and family kind of ask, do you have any tips or pitfalls, things to avoid? Because money and family.
Well, I avoided that route a little bit. I mean, I had one friend that put in some friends and family put like a small amount in the crowdfunding, but I tried to avoid that early on because I don't like that. Yeah, and I didn't have a ton of family that could invest, but I just kind of went around that route. But I don't know if you dealt with family friends. I mean, I just think obviously if it's something you believe in, though, so you take it to them, and you can lay it out for them, and they are in the means knowing that if it doesn't work out, they lose that money. Then it's good. You just want to be very clear about what you're selling them on, since you will see them all the time.
I mean, from my personal point of view, just from the businesses that we started with the CBD companies, we were profitable basically from day one. But that was because when I talk to people, I educate them on what's going on. You need to know the product. You need to know what the product's doing for them. And my education sells the product. I mean, just basic sales 101 is they don't buy the product, they buy you. So if you can educate them and let them know what's going on and what's going on inside their body, I mean, this all comes down to the science and how it's really, truly affecting you. If you're not patient first, customer first on these type of products specifically, you're already out the door. So, we started our company with our own funding, with our own finances, very, very small amount, and have grown from there. So you don't always have to go for that, and you don't have to always grow exponentially or have all this money right off the get-go. It's just about figuring out how you want to scale, where you want to go, and what you want to do. Now, if you're a manufacturing facility and you need to have all of these machines to do this, obviously you need to get money from it. But if you're a product line doing something like that, as long as you know the product and know what it can do for you, and you get a small batch and you start working at it yourself and you really start doing your due diligence to find where the best product is, where you can get it from, where you can source it from, transparency, being compliant. You don't have to have a ton of money to get started into this business. It's a big fallacy. You don't need that. It's just really focusing on what you want to do and knowing that if you put some of your own money in and you make sure that you get the product out there and educate the consumers, they'll buy your product.
I think part of the disconnect is, I think the people we've been talking to think it's the lottery. So sort of the expectation is if I put a little bit of money in your company, we're all going to be super rich. So that's one of the...
So, friends and family money is a double-edged sword.
Yes.
Oftentimes it's easy to get, and it's cheap money. You don't have to give up much of your company at all. And keep in mind that it could be an equity investment or a debt investment, so it depends on the structure of the investment. But even if it's an equity investment, you're typically getting a decent amount of money for very little equity, so you're maintaining a big part of your equity. The downside, which is if you lose their money, they're going to be upset possibly. That's where early on, show them the business plan. And show them the business plan, show them the financials, show them the model, show them where you think you're going, and then have them make their own independent decision. Don't just say, hey, I got this great idea, give me money. Give them, this is why I think we're going to make money. It may work out, it may not, but at least you can make an informed decision because I've given you all this information. So that helps you kind of mitigate that